Across our planet, there are places so extraordinary that people are willing to travel halfway around the world just to experience them for themselves. But in those very places, nature does more than shape the landscape. It determines how people live. Towns where every breath stings because of the relentless cold. Villages built at the foot of active volcanoes, where residents live with the constant threat of eruptions while enduring powerful storms. And communities trapped between rivers and mountains, where a single landslide can erase the only road connecting them to the outside world. Yet for thousands of people, these dangers have become part of everyday life, passed down through generations that have grown up and built their lives in these extraordinary places. This is a journey to the limits of human adaptation, where people cannot change nature, only learn how to survive in some of the harshest environments our planet has to offer. The Sahara Desert, stretching across North Africa, the Sahara Desert is like an ocean without water, where endless sand dunes roll all the way to the horizon. During the day, temperatures in many areas can climb above 50 degrees Celsius, while the nearest water source may be hundreds of kilometers away. That extreme scarcity makes permanent life here seem almost impossible. Yet for centuries, nomadic communities have crossed this sea of sand, following ancient trade routes and navigating by the stars, the shifting patterns of the dunes, and the memory of every rare oasis. Every journey must be carefully planned, because a single wrong turn could leave the next source of water several days away across the desert. In the Sahara, the greatest treasure has never been how far you've traveled, but where you can still find water to keep going. Miyakojima Island. On Japan's Miyakojima Island, the greatest danger doesn't come when the volcano erupts. It exists in the very air people breathe every day. After the major eruption in 2000, the island's entire population was forced to evacuate as sulfur dioxide blanketed the island for years. Yet when conditions finally allowed, they returned reopened schools, restored the harbor, and rebuilt their lives on the very island they had once been forced to leave behind. Even today, toxic gas monitoring systems operate around the clock. Warning sirens are always ready to sound, and gas masks remain close at hand whenever sulfur dioxide levels begin to rise. The people here have learned to live with that reality, turning an island that once seemed impossible to inhabit into the place they still call home. Longyearbyen, Svalbard. The farther you travel into the Arctic, the fewer signs of human life remain. Yet Longyearbyen continues to function as a true town, where every aspect of daily life has adapted to months of darkness, bitter cold, and extreme isolation. For much of the winter, the sun never rises above the horizon. Temperatures regularly fall below -20 degrees Celsius, while snow and ice blanket the streets, making travel and everyday life increasingly difficult. The moment you leave the settlement, the possibility of encountering a polar bear becomes a very real danger. Every trip into the surrounding wilderness requires careful preparation. The permanently frozen ground makes burial nearly impossible, while medical services are limited. People with serious illnesses are typically flown to mainland Norway for treatment. Even so, more than 2,000 residents continue to call Longyearbyen home, accepting a life where every journey, every outdoor activity, and even the final decisions at the end of life must be shaped by the demanding conditions of the high Arctic. The Uro's floating islands. In the middle of Peru's Lake Titicaca, the Uros people have created one of the world's most extraordinary communities on islands built entirely from totora reeds. Thousands of bundles of reeds are woven together into multiple layers to form floating ground on the surface of the lake, but they do not last forever. The lower layers constantly decay, forcing residents to add fresh layers throughout the year to keep the entire island from gradually sinking beneath the water. Their homes, walkways, boats, and even watchtowers are all built from those same reeds. As a result, the people here depend not only on the weather or the lake, but also on a task that never ends, preserving the very ground beneath their feet. And every time a fresh layer of reeds is spread across the island, life here begins another day. Mesa Verde. Hidden beneath towering cliffs in Colorado, Mesa Verde is home to hundreds of rooms built directly into natural rock alcoves. More than 700 years ago, the ancestral Pueblo people transformed these steep cliffside spaces into a home for an entire community. Every day, they carried water, food, and building materials across rugged terrain, while the rock overhangs above shielded them from the summer sun and softened the cold of winter. To enter or leave their homes, they climbed narrow stone steps and steep ladders, where a single, careless step could lead to an accident. Yet among cliffs that seem unfit for human life, an entire community endured for generations. V/Kiba Village and Chicham Bridge. Perched more than 4,200 meters above sea level in the Himalayas, Kiba is one of the highest permanently inhabited villages in the world. For generations, a deep gorge and a fast-flowing glacial river left the village nearly isolated. To reach Chicham on the opposite side, residents had to hike mountain trails for hours or cross the gorge on a manually operated cable system suspended high above the abyss. It was not until 2017 that the Chicham Suspension Bridge finally connected the two cliffs with a span more than 120 meters long, reducing the journey from several hours to just a few minutes. The bridge not only made travel safer, but also opened access to schools, hospitals, trade, and essential services, transforming the lives of an entire community that had long been separated by the high Himalayas. Tanna Island and Mount Yasur. The deep rumble of Mount Yasur has become a familiar sound on Tanna Island, Vanuatu. Here, one of the world's longest continuously active volcanoes continues to send ash and glowing rocks high into the sky. At the foot of the volcano, generations of people continue to build their lives, accepting the presence of a danger that could awaken at any moment. They watch the rising plume of smoke, listen to the rhythm of the eruptions, and follow official warnings to decide when to farm, travel, or evacuate if necessary. In return, layers of volcanic ash continually enrich the soil, allowing food crops to thrive across the island. That paradox is what has kept people on Tanna. The volcano is a constant reminder of the danger they live with, yet it is also the source of life that sustains an entire community. Werebo Village. Hidden among the mountains of Flores Island, Indonesia, Werebo emerges through the mist with its distinctive cone-shaped Mbaru Niang houses standing more than 1,100 meters above sea level. Behind that breathtaking view lies one of the most remote villages in the region. Even today, there is still no road leading directly into the village. Reaching it requires hours of hiking through the forest, and every trip down the mountain is a long journey to obtain food, supplies, and other essential services. Electricity is available only for a short time each evening, and cell phone service is almost non-existent, leaving life here largely isolated from the outside world. Even so, generation after generation has chosen to remain, continuing life in these remote mountains where every day begins and ends along narrow forest trails. Shibam. In Yemen's arid Hadramaut Valley, the mud brick towers of Shibam rise above the reddish-brown earth. From a distance, the city looks like a cluster of skyscrapers standing in the middle of a landscape with almost no vegetation. But the greatest danger here is not the heat. Rare storms from the surrounding highlands can quickly turn the valley floor into a flash flood that rushes straight through the city. After every rainy season, the earthen walls are worn away, forcing residents to patch them with fresh mud and repair every crack before it spreads. The work repeats itself year after year, because if it is neglected for too long, an entire house can collapse. It is this relentless maintenance that has allowed Shibam to survive for generations, where the life of an entire city depends on an endless battle against rain and time. Pripyat. Pripyat was once one of the Soviet Union's youngest and most modern cities, built to serve the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Within hours of the explosion of reactor number 4 in April 1986, an invisible threat turned the city into a place where people could no longer live. More than 49,000 residents were evacuated with the expectation that they would return in just a few days, but most of them never did. Schools, hospitals, an amusement park, and thousands of apartments remain exactly where they were, while nature has gradually reclaimed the empty streets. Today, most of Pripyat lies inside the Chernobyl exclusion zone, where long-term residence remains restricted because of the continuing risk of radiation exposure. Time seems to move forward only for the trees, while the city itself remains frozen in the spring of 1986. Tonle Sap Lake. Few places on Earth require an entire community to live according to the rhythm of the water, quite like Cambodia's Tonle Sap Lake. Every year, when the rainy season arrives, the Tonle Sap River reverses its flow, sending enormous volumes of water from the Mekong back into the lake, allowing its surface area to expand several times over. Floating homes move with the changing water level, while houses built on towering stilts do not actually reach the water until the flood season begins. Schools, markets, fishing boats, and everyday life all operate according to the lake's seasonal rise and fall. That constant transformation has also created one of Southeast Asia's richest freshwater ecosystems, supporting millions of people. Then, when the dry season returns, the water recedes once again, and life on the lake begins preparing for another cycle. Iquitos. Iquitos, Peru, is the largest city in the world that cannot be reached by car. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, it is surrounded by an intricate network of rivers and vegetation so dense that no highway connects it with any other city in Peru. There are only two ways to reach Iquitos: by airplane or by spending several days traveling along the Amazon River system by boat. That isolation means that most food, fuel, building materials, and consumer goods must be transported either by river or by air, making the cost of living significantly higher than in many other places. Even so, more than 500,000 people continue to call this rainforest home, where the river serves as both the city's transportation network and its lifeline. La Rinconada. Even breathing becomes a challenge in La Rinconada, a town sitting more than 5,000 meters above sea level in Peru's Andes. The air is so thin that oxygen levels are only about half of what they are at sea level, causing many newcomers to quickly experience shortness of breath, headaches, and exhaustion. Even so, more than 50,000 residents continue to live year-round beneath the Anania Glacier, where gold mines have attracted workers from across Peru. Temperatures frequently fall below 0 degrees Celsius, while access to clean water and proper waste treatment remains extremely limited. Despite those conditions, the tunnels deep inside the mountain continue to swallow groups of miners day after day. The dream of striking it rich is powerful enough to keep an entire city alive in a place that seems almost unfit for human life. Fogtal Monastery. At first glance, Fogtal Monastery seems almost impossible to believe that people have managed to live in such an unforgiving place. There is no road leading directly to the monastery. The only way to reach it is by following narrow mountain trails, crossing deep gorges and icy rivers before arriving at the cave entrance where the monastery was built. Standing more than 3,800 meters above sea level, the monastery endures long winters, heavy snowfall, and bitter temperatures that make transporting food, building materials, and daily necessities an enormous challenge. Even so, dozens of monks have continued to live and study here for generations, relying on a spring that flows from within the cave and support from the surrounding villages. Amid cliffs that are almost completely cut off from the outside world, the sound of prayer continues to echo every day, just as it has for centuries. Oymyakon. White smoke rises constantly from the rooftops of Oymyakon, a small village in Russia's Sakha Republic, where winter can last for more than half the year. Temperatures regularly fall below -50 degrees Celsius and have even approached -68 degrees Celsius, leaving the ground locked in permafrost and forcing every aspect of daily life to revolve around the cold. Residents rarely turn off their vehicles because the engines may never restart. Water is pumped only at scheduled times to keep pipes from freezing, and farming is almost impossible. Most food comes from meat, fish, and dairy products that are naturally preserved by the freezing temperatures. Even so, generations of people have chosen to remain, accepting a way of life dictated by winter itself. Each morning, through the thick blanket of frost that covers the village, doors still open and another day begins, as though the cold has never been a reason to leave. Kuba PD. In Kuba PD, the safest homes are not built above the ground, but carved deep beneath it. Summer temperatures here regularly exceed 40 degrees Celsius, with some days reaching 50 degrees Celsius, making the surface unbearably hot and outdoor life extremely harsh. Instead of continuing to battle the heat, residents began digging into the soft sandstone to create dugouts, homes built entirely underground. Surrounded by thick layers of rock, the interior stays at a comfortable 22 to 24 degrees Celsius, with little need for air conditioning. Over time, not only homes, but also hotels, churches, museums, and shops moved underground, creating one of the world's most unusual desert communities. While the sun scorches the land above, everyday life in Kuba PD unfolds quietly beneath people's feet. Yanjian County, China. Squeezed between a river and towering cliffs, parts of Yanjian are only about 30 meters wide, forcing the entire city to grow as a long, narrow strip instead of expanding like a typical urban area. With so little land available, buildings rise vertically or stand on concrete columns along the riverbank, leaving room for floodwaters during the rainy season. When heavy rain arrives, neighborhoods near the river face rising water, while the steep mountainsides above are threatened by landslides, placing the city under pressure from both directions at once. There is very little space to relocate or build new neighborhoods, so every road, building, and piece of infrastructure must fit within the limited land that remains. Expanding the city is almost impossible, because every additional meter of land comes with the risk posed either by the river below or the mountains above. Pitcairn Island. Whenever the supply ship departs, Pitcairn Island is once again left almost completely isolated from the rest of the world. This tiny island in the South Pacific has no airport and no deep-water harbor capable of receiving large ships. Everything the community depends on, from fuel and medicine to building materials, must be transferred from ships offshore onto longboats before making the final trip through the waves into Bounty Bay. If rough seas persist, supplies can be delayed for days, forcing residents to stockpile, repair, and make the most of nearly everything they have. Despite that isolation, a small community has remained here for generations, sustaining itself through fishing, farming, and livestock. As the sun sets, the island quietly settles into the vast Pacific. Here, distance is measured not only in nautical miles, but also by humanity's ability to survive on its own. Setenil de las Bodegas. In Setenil de las Bodegas, when you look up, you do not see the sky. You see thousands of tons of rock hanging overhead. Massive rock formations jutting from the cliffs cover entire streets, leading residents centuries ago to turn the landscape itself into part of their homes. Rather than carving away the mountainside, they used the natural rock overhangs to shield their houses from the intense sun of southern Spain, while keeping the interiors cool throughout the year. Over the centuries, streets, cafes, and shops have continued to thrive beneath these enormous stone overhangs, creating one of the world's most remarkable towns. Here, the boundary between nature and human habitation almost disappears, making every step feel as though you are walking through the heart of the mountain itself. Castellfollit de la Roca, Castellfollit de la Roca stretches across a strip of rock so narrow that by the time you reach the end of the main street, there is simply no land left ahead. The entire village stands on a basalt cliff, about 50 meters high and less than 1 kilometer long, formed by lava flows that cooled hundreds of thousands of years ago. Stone houses line the edge of the cliff, while the Fluvia and Torinel rivers wind around its base below. There is virtually no room to expand, so every street, small square, and home has been shaped to fit the natural contours of the rock. As the years have passed, life has continued on this narrow ridge, with every meter of land carefully used to sustain a community suspended high above the valley. At the end of the street, even the rooftops come to an end, giving way to the sheer cliff edge, as if the village has reached the very limit of solid ground. Lindisfarne, the Holy Island. The road to Lindisfarne does not always exist. Twice each day, tides from the North Sea rise high enough to completely submerge the nearly 5-kilometer causeway linking the island to the mainland. Arrive just a few minutes too late, and the way back disappears beneath the water, leaving travelers to wait for hours until the tide recedes. Although electronic warning signs, tide tables, and roadside notices line the route, vehicles still become stranded every year because people underestimate how quickly the sea can rise. Even so, the island's small community has quietly maintained its way of life for decades, planning every journey around the rhythm of the tides. When the water covers the causeway, Lindisfarne once again becomes exactly what its name suggests: an island. Guyaju cave dwellings. Rows of windows appear directly in the face of a rocky cliff, as though an entire village had been carved into the mountainside. This is the Guyaju cave dwellings, a complex of more than 100 caves carved directly into the cliffs north of Beijing. Instead of building houses on the surface, the people who once lived here carved living quarters, stairways, storage rooms, and windows into the mountain itself, using the surrounding rock as both walls and roof. To this day, the identity of the builders remains a mystery, but the traces they left behind reveal a well-organized community. Hundreds of years later, the ruins still cling to the mountainside, reminding us that there was once a time when people chose to turn solid rock into the foundation of everyday life. Escher Cliff Restaurant. A nearly vertical cliff determined the location of Escher Cliff Restaurant, where the entire building is pressed against the mountainside instead of standing on level ground. Perched about 1,450 meters above sea level, it can only be reached by cable car, followed by a hike through the wild Kirchley Caves or along mountain trails. More than a century later, the building still endures in this rugged landscape, backed by a massive wall of rock with a balcony overlooking the deep Appenzell Valley. Everything from food and fuel to everyday supplies must be transported here by a journey that is anything but simple. Standing on Escher's terrace, you quickly realize that this place is not merely built on a cliff. It exists because of the mountain itself. Aogashima Island. In the middle of the vast Pacific Ocean, Aogashima looks like a giant volcano, hollowed out at its very center. Within that remarkable geological formation, a small community continues to adapt every day, even though the island remains one of Japan's active volcanoes. A major eruption in the late 18th century forced every resident to evacuate, but years later they returned and rebuilt their lives from the ground up. Today, residents harness the island's natural geothermal energy for heating, cooking, and everyday living, turning the volcano's heat into part of daily life. When night falls, lights appear inside the volcanic crater, where people have chosen to live alongside a mountain that has never truly fallen asleep. Masuleh Village. Built into the steep slopes of Iran's Alborz Mountains, Masuleh stands on terrain so steep that there is almost no level ground for roads or urban expansion. Every day, residents climb hundreds of stone steps just to carry food, water, and building materials home because motor vehicles cannot enter the village. In winter, snow blankets the pathways, while during the rainy season, dense fog and slippery stone steps make every journey vulnerable to falls and landslides. Even simple tasks, such as moving supplies or carrying a sick person down the mountain, can become an ordeal lasting for hours. These demanding natural conditions forced generations of residents to build terraced homes, making use of every remaining patch of land to sustain life on the mountainside. From towering cliffs and isolated islands in the middle of the ocean to villages hidden inside volcanic landscapes, each of these places proves that people can adapt in ways few would ever imagine. And these are only a small glimpse of the world's most extraordinary and extreme places that people still call home. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to join us on many more adventures. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.